Hey, get this. Ed and Eddie, but anime. Yeah, we got it. A tall one, a thin one, and a gremlin. No, one of them is obsessed with money, and the intro is some abstract shapes, got it. Okay, but aside from the visual similarities, have you considered how their personalities and roles within the ensemble relate to one another? I mean, Eds may have not invented the comic trio, but fuck that boomer crap. Give me my jawbreaker and a bike and a plank and never trust an adult. So anyway, you have your leader coming up with ideas and being the driving force behind the group's endeavors. The fool who's a little oblivious to reality and needs to be course corrected every now and then the sane man who tries to keep things from spiraling out of control as much as they can. And while they are each distinct individuals, together they may appear as a group of bumbling fools to the outsiders. EE&E used this formula to try and tell a universal story about childhood, about the inability to fit in, enduring bullying, and unfulfilled desire to be embraced. Because of their insecurities, awkwardness, and stupidity, they are unable to recognize that what they want, to scam their neighbors for jawbreaker money, stands directly in the way of what they need: connections, kindness, and love. This classic conflict sets the ground for making absurdist and even abstract comedy that is nevertheless rooted in something relatable to a broad audience. Eizouken, however, isn't afraid to alienate some of its viewers, as it jumps 2 whole steps on Maslow's hierarchy, all the way to the top where self-actualization resides. It takes the same comic trio formula, but instead of being weird and vulgar, it's passionate and inspiring, as it explores the broad topic of creativity. Asakusa Midori is a potato who dreams of making anime, but she's too timid to actually try and grasp her dream, so instead she just thinks up lots of ideas and draws concept art without actually trying to animate. She has a frumpy friend named Kanamori Sayaka who doesn't seem to share her interest, but she's the only one who can lend an ear to her ramblings. That is, until they meet Mizusaki Tsubame, a famous teen model with secret passion for animation, which her parents look on unfavorably. Asakusa breaks the trope of a leader a little, as she's meek and lacks faith in her own abilities, but once she gets some encouragement, she becomes a volcano of creativity, coming up with dozens of ideas and solutions. Mizusaki may not exactly be a fool, but she is a little clueless due to being somewhat sheltered, and also she's pretty simple-minded. She wants to be an animator, but her parents said no, so she doesn't pursue her passion for the time being. It takes Kanamori to put the two together and make them realize that they can make movies after figuring out how to circumvent Tsubame's prohibition. Throughout the show, she has to temper the other girls' wild fantasies and ground their ambitions to ensure that their projects don't fall apart and they actually produce something. It's not really a comedy, at least not a laugh-out-loud one, but the tried and true dynamic of a comic trio serves as a great base to explore the realities of participating in creative endeavors. And because there are only 3 girls in the studio, each of them represents a very distinct type of creative personality and role in the project. Everything begins with Asakusa. She's neurotic, shy, unconfident and insecure, but give her just a little of an ego boost and she starts parading around like she can do everything no matter the time constraints: story, backgrounds, animation, sound. But just like any manic author, her work is very chaotic and she'd rather think up new stories than finish the one she's working on right now, and you can't expect any consistency out of her. She'll spend a week finding any excuse and distraction available to get away from work, but then something will click and she'll suddenly triple her productivity over a few days. One moment she's excited for the new project, the next she starts to worry about everything that can go wrong, and soon after she goes into denial, escaping into the world of fantasy to avert her gaze from the painful, uncomfortable truth of deadlines. Her partner in crime is a person even more likely to turn eyes away from reality, the girl in love with life and motion itself, Mizusaki. She presents an admirable dedication to her craft, most evident in the touching flashback scenes where we see how she gets fascinated with physical phenomena and can't rest until she's able to completely internalize them. And also in that scene from episode 7 where she pretty much explains her whole deal to viewers, revealing that she doesn't really care about anime as a whole, but rather explicitly about the animation part. Tsubame is an incredibly devoted artist who doesn't necessarily care about what kind of story she tells or even about creating something particular really, but rather about complete mastery of this skill that gives entire new dimension to how she sees the world, which in turn inspires her to continue giving life to drawings. Now if you pair that mild mind of Asakusa with linear drive of Mizusaki, you will probably end up with nothing being created, as they'll over-ambitiously aim way above their reach and the result will end up being nothing more than a flash in the pan. You need someone who will straighten them up and drag them kicking and screaming if necessary. And this is where the fan favorite Kanamori comes in. Kanamori doesn't really seem to care about anime. Instead, she finds interest in the business side of things, being a producer, manager, marketer, and a fixer. But it's not that producing anime with the two is some goldmine that can get her rich quickly. I think it's just as much of a passion project for her. It lets her set up deals, tackle various problems, and she probably enjoys hanging out with the two girls and working together on some level. Or at least she feels responsible for them enough to warrant putting so much time and effort into helping make their dreams into reality. I think it goes without saying that you need someone to fulfill all three roles to get any sort of work done: the director, the performer, and the producer. Of course, you can combine them into one independent creator, and then in more complex endeavors you usually have those responsibilities split among many more. But I think this trio showcases three general archetypes. Whether you're in this because you have an idea, because you want to go through this journey, or because you want to see an end product. Whether you're creating for yourself, for the art, or for the audience. Of course, there's much more nuance in this if you want to keep digging. For example, Kanamori challenges the traditional way of thinking about money and what it means ethically to pursue it. While this story naturally puts her into money-grabbing stereotype because she's the only one of the three that's a businessman and not an artist, she gets plenty of opportunity to explain why she's so fixated on profitability and why what may seem like greed is actually just being more matter of fact than her art-oriented friends. On the other hand, you have Mizusaki, who compared to the other two doesn't really seem to be wearing that many hats. In fact, she's hyper-focused on finishing her cuts and can often be completely detached from how the whole movie production is going. This can make her seem like a less interesting member of the cast, but considering the realities of making animation, it makes sense. It's an incredibly laborious process of drawing a slightly different picture over and over and over and over and over again, until you have enough of them to deceive the brain into thinking that this is in fact emotion and not just a very quick PowerPoint presentation. Instead, we get a deep look at just what makes Tsubame so infatuated with the medium, the comparisons she draws between live acting and being an actor with a pencil. How she sees all types of performance as parts of a one big whole, that all boils down to one's understanding of motion and timing, and why she believes that animation is the peak of it. I think Eizouken balances his portrayal of creating anime very well in this regard. There's all sorts of considerations you need to make on both creative and business side of things, but it's the heart and soul of animators that truly stands at the center of it all, and we better not forget that. And while my ranting was focused on the more inspirational and contemplative aspects of Eizouken, I think it's worth mentioning once more that the success of this story lies just as much in its slice of life and comedic sides. Whether it's taking jabs at giant robot fans in a way that makes me think Sumito Owara is a giant robot fan himself, choreographing complex scenes with lots of people, offering Kanamori endless material for snarky comments, or the whimsical pitches of Asakusa with voiced out sound effects and art resembling production materials. Eizouken sells the atmosphere of creative work just as much as it indulges in deep thoughts about it. There have been anime about anime before, most notably the beloved Shirobako and Subversive Girlish number. But whereas the former was focused on the realities of modern anime industry and the latter on the cynicism of show business, Eizouken feels universal to any sort of creative group venture. It showcases different creator-type personalities, what drives them, how they think, how they feel, what they want, and how they go on about achieving it. To push the boundaries of mastery over your craft, to give life to the ideas you foster, and to adapt and survive in every environment. Artistry, vision, and resourcefulness. Eizouken gave us an incredibly comprehensive and beautiful look into production process, while telling its story with a lot of heart, energy, and personality. I know damn well I'm gonna have a Pavlovian reaction to whenever I hear that tremolo guitar and the echoing